Well, a happy Easter to you. For our sermon this day, I will be providing a dramatic retelling of their Easter story from the perspective of St. Peter. So pretend I'm St. Peter. I want to tell you about how Jesus changed my life. Long before I was called Saint anything, I was rash, overly zealous, and enthusiastic, and not always in a good way. I often blurted out the wrong things at the wrong time. My wife was used to it, and she loved me anyway. My kids tolerated it, but Jesus turned it into something useful. My brother Andrew was a fellow fisherman, and we had a pretty decent business going in Lake Gennesaret. But when we heard about John the Baptist, we had to go and see him. Much to our surprise, he pointed us in the direction of someone else, someone named Jesus. I will never forget the day my brother introduced me to Jesus because something inside me changed and opened up in his presence. Jesus possessed a kind but gentle authority that was unlike any rabbi I'd ever encountered. I followed Jesus around for a little while at first, but then went back to fishing. I couldn't quite figure out what God wanted me to do, and like so many of us, I was still searching. But then the call came, and when it came to me, I had a moment of clear decision, and I knew my life was never going to be the same. Jesus called out, "Come and follow me, and I will make you fish for people." And my heart said, yes. And I dropped my nets then and there to follow him. I sometimes wonder if I had known exactly what he meant, and if I'd known all that was in store for me, would I still have accepted that call? It's hard to say. I guess that's why God only lets us see just so far down the path of life. It's usually better just to take it, one day at a time. Now, I may not have been the smartest or the most eloquent of the disciples, but I beat them all in enthusiasm. When Jesus called out to me one afternoon, beckoning me to walk out onto the water to him, I jumped out of the boat immediately. And for a few glorious seconds, I was on top of the water, walking on water. You should have seen it. All was well as long as I kept my eyes on Jesus. But as soon as I looked away, I began to sink. Remember not to take your eyes off Jesus, especially when times are tough, because he is the one who will get you through and keep you afloat. Walking on water aside, like most of us, I have my good days and my bad days. When Jesus asked us, "Who do you say that I am?" I blurted out, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus called me blessed and told me that God had revealed that insight to me. That was definitely a good day. Not long after that, however, when Jesus started talking about his death, I revolted and shouted out, "Never, Lord, that will never happen to you." Then Jesus looked right at me and said, "Get behind me, Satan. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." Well, that was a less than good day. Back then, I thought I was ready to do battle and to fight to the death for my master. Guess that's why I was so surprised by what happened that night in the Garden of Gethsemane. I was still confused back then, and Jesus wasn't the kind of Messiah that I or any of us really expected. In the garden that night, Jesus was praying and was clearly in anguish. It scared me, so I just tuned out. I still regret the fact that I slept through Jesus' ordeal in the hour of his need. My spirit was willing, but my flesh was so weak. Then, when Judas, the leaders and soldiers arrived to arrest Jesus, I thought it was my chance to prove myself. And in my zeal, I cut off the guard's ear. But violence isn't Jesus' way, and I realized my mistake quickly as he healed it, thankfully. Unfortunately, you know what happened next. Jesus went away willingly and was tried and condemned unjustly. And while he was suffering, I denied even knowing Jesus 3 times. 3 times. I even went and hid while he was being tortured and crucified. Yeah, I was faithless and afraid. We all thought we too would be killed. And I wasn't ready to face my own death. Not yet. After Jesus died, the sadness and despair I felt were overwhelming. I had left everything to go and follow him, and then I denied him when it really mattered and when it really counted. Grief and shame washed over me in waves. I didn't know what to do. I was utterly confused, like we all were. I wish I could say that I put the pieces together when the women burst through the door after finding Jesus' tomb empty that Sunday. Mary Magdalene, Joanna, and Mary were beside themselves with awe and explained how the angel had appeared to them and commissioned them to tell the good news that the Lord was not there. He'd risen. Initially, everyone was dismissing their words as nonsense, but something in my mind sparked, and I had to know for myself. So I jumped up and ran out the door impulsively. I ran all the way to that old tomb, and I didn't even pause when I saw the stone had been rolled away. I ran inside head first. I don't know what I was expecting to see, but I understood it when I saw it. He was really gone. There was nothing in there but the empty cloth that had once been wrapped around his dead body. There were no angels either, just an emptiness filled with promise. I was amazed and too stunned to think clearly. I walked slowly back home in silence. Jesus had been truly dead. I know that. But was it really possible? He was alive again. Was the impossible actually possible? I'm here to tell you that yes, the impossible really is possible with God. Jesus appeared to us not long after that, and he was no ghost. He was the living, breathing Jesus with the scars still in his hands and feet and side. I couldn't believe it, but I had to. Jesus was really alive. He had risen from the dead, just like he'd said. But then my excitement gave way to fear. Would he be angry with me for having denied and abandoned him? Suddenly my shame came rushing back with force. But Jesus didn't leave me in my shame. A few days later, Jesus looked right at me and he asked me 3 times, 3 times, once for every time I denied him, "Do you love me?" And I answered him with all the feeling I had in me, "Yes, Lord, you know that I do." And each time he responded, "Go and feed my sheep." So that's what I did. Jesus forgave and restored me despite everything. I know that all of us make mistakes, sometimes terrible mistakes, and we all betray Jesus at some point. Shame can trap any of us the way it did me. But Jesus didn't hold my failings against me. He doesn't hold them against any of us, not even you. His love transformed me so that I could go back into the world and do God's work and feed God's sheep. That was my personal redemption. That was my resurrection. Jesus transformed me from a cowardly and sinful man into the redeemed and faithful man that I became. his wounds healed my wounds. And by his death and resurrection, he freed me from my sin. Jesus has freed us all from the power of sin and death and shame. Jesus changed my life. He'll change yours too. Life can't ever be the same once you've met the resurrected Jesus. He is alive. He is risen. Alleluia.